This channel's very first episode highlighted diary entries by Edmund Ruffin, a Virginia fire eater who, in 1859, made a point of traveling to witness John Brown's execution after the failed raid on Harper's Ferry. It was a perfect example of one fanatic recognizing, and even in his own way, respecting another on the opposing side. But earlier in the antebellum era, Ruffin had a surprisingly different reaction to an episode that also provoked hysteria throughout Virginia, one that was both cool-headed and courageous. It's interesting and somewhat counterintuitive to contrast Edmund Ruffin's reaction to and participation in the aftermath of John Brown's failed raid with Ruffin's 1862 recollection of the state of insanity of a community in Lower Virginia and North Carolina following and caused by the insurrection of slaves and their massacre of whites in Southampton County in 1831, the Nat Turner Revolt. There was full proof that the knowledge of the design was confined to 3 persons only until within a few hours of the beginning of the massacre, and that it could not have been previously divulged elsewhere or to others, Ruffin wrote. Yet terror and fear so affected most persons as to produce a condition of extended and very general community insanity. Many slaves, who certainly had never heard of the insurrection until after its complete suppression, and some 100 miles and more from the scene, were charged with participation and tried and condemned to death on testimony of facts or from infamous witnesses, which at any sober time would not have been deemed sufficient to convict a dog suspected of killing a sheep. Ruffin found the case against one falsely convicted slave so egregious that he exerted myself to get up a petition to the governor, which I wrote, for the pardon of this convict. There was scarcely any person to whom I applied who did not believe the man innocent, but who still did not refuse to meddle with the matter so far as to sign the petition, to which I could obtain but 11 signatures besides my own. Ruffin nevertheless went to Richmond to deliver the petition to Governor John Floyd, who did not dare or deem it politic to grant the petition or to pardon in any such case. And Ruffin did not escape much odium, and even intimations were uttered that I ought to be punished by personal violence. Some who thus joined in condemning me had previously confessed to me their belief in the entire innocence of the convict. Fast forward to 1860. Virginia itself, the 1831 overreaction to the Turner Revolt notwithstanding, was too moderate for Ruffin. He gravitated toward the more radical, if wishy-washy, mood of South Carolina, corresponding with James Henry Hammond and Robert Barnwell Rhett, the latter of whom had advocated secession as early as the 1820s, and whose newspaper, the Charleston Mercury, provided an occasional outlet for Ruffin's screeds. On Election Day, November 6, 1860, Ruffin voted for John C. Breckinridge, one of the 3 alternatives to Abraham Lincoln, whose divided opposition assured the victory Ruffin and other fire eaters hoped would force Southerners to choose between secession and submission to abolition domination. Ruffin then immediately left for South Carolina, where I hope that even my feeble aid may be worth something to forward the secession of the state and consequently of the whole South. He immediately felt more at home than he had all his life in Virginia, where his innovations in agriculture were too often underappreciated, though they had done much to rejuvenate the exhausted soil of the Tidewater South, where his petitions generally went unsigned, and where the politics so frustrated him that he resigned his one term in the state Senate a year before it ended. Ruffin wrote his sons from South Carolina that the time I have been here has been the happiest of my life. The public events are as gratifying to me as they are glorious and momentous, and there has been much to gratify my individual and selfish feelings. His mood contrasted markedly with that expressed in his diary the day before learning of the John Brown raid on Harper's Ferry, when he complained of having latterly felt more the want of occupation than since giving up my businesses, and having no object whatever to strive for. He made a few return trips to Virginia, but with the formation in early 1861 of the Confederate States of America, initially without Virginia, he decided again to decamp to South Carolina before Lincoln's inauguration, to avoid being, as a Virginian, under his government even for an hour. In recognition of Ruffin's feeble aid to the secessionist cause, the Palmetto Guards, whose Iron Brigade he had joined, gave him the honor of firing the first shot at Fort Sumter on April 12th, and he wrote that he was highly gratified by the compliment and delighted to perform the service, which I did. The following week, a grandson was born and named Edmund Sumter Ruffin, and the same week, Ruffin learned that Virginia had finally seceded, so he returned home. 4 years later, consistent with his pre-war refusal to live under Lincoln's government, though by then Andrew Johnson was president, Ruffin wrote a final diary entry declaring my unmitigated hatred to Yankee rule, to all political, social, and business connections with Yankees, and to the Yankee race, and, with the aid of a forked stick, shot himself with his rifle. His children found his lifeless body still sitting upright, defiant and unyielding even in death, writes historian Eric H. Walther in The Fire Eaters, which along with Ruffin's diary is the source for this video. I think these episodes in Ruffin's life show how complicated and contradictory people, even fire eaters, can be. And by the way, this episode came from one of the companion posts on my website that I'm always encouraging you to check out. It really rounds out Ruffin's story and the original episode about his eyewitness account of John Brown's hanging, which I also encourage you to watch if you haven't already. And help this little channel keep growing by hitting the like button, subscribing, commenting with your thoughts, and sharing with anyone you think might be interested. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.